Hi, I'm Roberta from Quilt Crafters Corner, and we've been talking about art composition in our quilts. Now, I'm a passionate quilter and I get really excited about finding new ideas and techniques. So I'm on a mission to share those new ideas and techniques with you so that you can bring your imagination and your creativity into the unique quilts you want to make. So let's talk a little bit more about composition. In the last video, I was talking about the focal points, where your eye wants to go to when you look at a piece of art, or a quilt for that matter. This is all what your eye is drawn to. And for everybody, it can be something different. So for you, when you're creating your quilt, it's really important that it's what your eye goes to. That's the most important part of this. Okay, so on the wall behind me, I have set this up, and these are just blocks that I had. And this was some of that fabric that I had sorted out from my backing fabrics that was left over. Now, when I started putting this on the wall, I knew the birds were going to be the focal point, but what I didn't see when I chose this fabric were the lines in the fabric. And as I started to put this together, that's where the focal point almost went to. Those lines had to line up, otherwise it would have just looked off. It wouldn't have looked nearly as pleasing to the eye. So even though the birds are the focal point, those stripes that are going through this fabric are the most important part, because if those were off, your eye would go to that first. It would not go to the birds. So it was really important that I lined those up. These are some of the things that I'm talking about when I'm talking about balance. Now, this is more about balance than it is focal point. So the balance of this quilt is because these lines line up and everything matches so that it all seems to be a little bit more balanced. Now, if this is something you're interested in, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out, and it's free. When I'm talking about balance, I'm talking about symmetrical, asymmetrical, radial, or crystallographic. Now, symmetrical is where it's even on both sides. Asymmetrical is where everything's kind of shaped all over the place, more of an abstract. Radial is when it starts in the center and moves out. And crystallographic is a lot like a mosaic or maybe even a scrap quilt. So let's take a look at some of these ideas that you can do with your quilts as far as the balance is concerned. Look at how balanced this quilt is. The diamond-shaped blocks are set evenly on a black background. See that pinwheel border? It frames the whole design perfectly. What's really cool is how the orange and gray colors are spread out evenly. This quilt shows us that symmetry isn't just about shapes, it's about color too. Everything here is in perfect balance, making it really pleasing to look at. Check out this cool scrap quilt. It's got 12 blocks in 3 neat columns. Each block is a little windmill made out of colorful fabric strips. See how they're all tilted the same way? It creates a fun spinning effect. Now the blocks are laid out symmetrically, but here's the twist. Each one is unique. The scraps are all different colors and patterns, but they're cut and placed similarly in each block. It's a great example of how you can have balance in your overall design while still keeping things scrappy and unique. If you want to get my quilt composition checklist, the link is in the description below this video. Okay, when we talk about balance, we're talking about shapes, we're talking about lines, we're talking about circles, those types of things. So when you go to put, and I'm just going to use these as an example, these could be done with quilt blocks, these could be done with a number of things. Some of your favorite fabrics that you've been holding on to and you haven't known what to do with. Now here's a real simple idea as far as shapes are going. This is in kind of a cross or a T type of shape. The other thing I could do is, like on the last quilt, I could do the diagonal down and then back. Or I could even fill this in a little bit more and try to almost get a circular type of pattern. Okay, as you can see, we've got more or a circle or even a rectangle type of idea here. And then I would fill this in with background fabric and then background fabric all around it. There's a lot of different ideas that you can do with your fabric. I'm just using these as an example. These, like I said, these could be made out of blocks. These could be made out of your favorite fabrics with maybe a nice sashing in between them to kind of separate them, which is what I'll do here between the birds. I'll probably sash these and then kind of put them into a really nice shape or pattern that is pleasing to the eye. These are those same blurb blocks I was just showing you. See how it's arranged? 3 blocks in the first and third columns and 2 in the middle. Each bird is unique, different colors, different plants. But look at how they're tied together with sashing. I use 4 colors for the sashing: orange, green, dark brown, and gray. Notice the pattern? Orange at the top and bottom, then green with dark brown and gray in the middle. It creates a subtle symmetry that balances out the variety in the bird blocks. This layout shows how you can create harmony even with diverse elements. The other thing that you need to be aware of, especially with balance, is color. When you're doing a quilt, such as a very scrappy quilt, color makes a big difference when you're laying out your quilt, because if the color is balanced, the quilt is balanced. And once you have a balanced quilt, it's much more pleasing to the eye, and other people are going to go, "Oh, I never thought of that." Or they will look at it and go, "Oh," and you could see their eyes following through the quilt. There's many quilts out there right now that you can look out to find that really nice balance in your quilts.
This quilt is called Amazing Stars, and it really lives up to its name. On a gray background, see those thin dark lines? They outline 13 different stars. Now look at the center. Those 5 big, colorful pinwheels really catch your eye. That's a great example of a radial design. Your gaze is drawn to the middle, then naturally moves outward to the other stars and that colorful border. It's like the whole quilt is spinning from the center. This shows how a radial design can create movement and interest in your quilt, guiding the viewer's eye across the entire piece.
Let's talk a little bit more about asymmetrical balance. Now this is very symmetrical here. If I were to go asymmetrical with this, I would take this out and maybe put something down here where it's everything's not lined up. It's more random.
Let's look at 2 great examples of asymmetrical designs. They both come from Houston International Quilt Festival. First, we have this vibrant quilt with blocks of all shapes and sizes. It might seem a bit chaotic at first glance, but look closer. The recurring shapes and colors create a sense of unity in this seemingly random layout. It's like a puzzle where every piece fits perfectly, even though they're all different. Now check out this Asian-inspired quilt. See how the purple, pink, and teal tones tie everything together? The flowers and leaves are scattered in a way that feels natural and balanced, even though it's not symmetrical. It's like looking at a beautiful garden where everything's growing in just the right spot. Both quilts show us that balance doesn't always mean perfect symmetry. Sometimes the most interesting designs come from breaking the rules a little and letting things flow naturally.
Asymmetrical isn't where everything is really lined up. It's just random. It's just in there, kind of popping in and out of letting your eye move through the quilt. Now, something like this could be, okay, something like this could be really used effectively with a lot of negative space. And in your negative space is where you could do that nice quilting. Maybe a fancy pattern or even just straight lines, whatever you're comfortable doing. The quilting on this could be really spectacular, or it could just be plain and simple and still be very effective with these birds.
Let's wrap up with two amazing examples of balance in quilting. First, check out this kaleidoscope quilt. It's a perfect example of crystallographic or mosaic balance. See those hexagons made from an old fabric calendar print, creating a mesmerizing pattern. Each piece is like a tiny mirror reflecting and building into this whole stunning quilt. Now look at this scrappy blue quilt. It seems chaotic at first, but there's a method to the madness. Those vertical and horizontal stripes, mostly blue with pops of yellow, gold, and some reds, come together to create a cozy, colorful masterpiece. It shows us that even the smallest scraps can become something beautiful when balanced just right. Both quilts remind us that balance in design can take many forms, from precise symmetry to organized chaos. Isn't it amazing what we can create with a little imagination and a lot of fabric?
These are all ideas you need to kind of think about and lay out and look at. Now, when I'm designing something, it goes up on my design wall here, and I'll look at it for a couple of days until I either find the right fabric or I find the right layout that I'm really happy with. So don't rush this part of your design. This could be a 2-day thing. This could be a 2-week thing. Sometimes it could be, 2 months, a year, maybe until you find the right fabric that's ready to go with your blocks. This is really a layout that you have to be happy with and then start to put it together. Now, there's many ideas of making layouts like this work. So don't feel that you have to kind of force it. This is getting in the flow of actually creating a design that you're happy with. So as you can see, there's many ideas that you can use to get a perfectly balanced quilt. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. Let me rephrase that. This is to get a balanced quilt so that you get that values of your contrast of your fabrics and maybe textures of your fabric, or even just the way your eye moves through the quilt and how you see it. These are really important parts of getting that perfect design for your quilts. So I'm glad you all joined me. Thank you. Please subscribe if you haven't, because that's really important to me, and it kind of lets me know that what I'm doing is what you want to hear. So once again, thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.